Hey, hello everyone. This is Prof. Dan, and welcome to Prof. Dan Tutorials. In today's video, we're gonna dive deep into the latest data on I-140 petitions, especially with great focus on the EB1, EB1A, and EB2 NIW categories. We are going to compare the approver, denial, and pending cases for fiscal year 2023 versus that of 2024 so far. I will also be breaking down how applicants from top countries are faring. We will explore key trends and key insights. So please stick around to the end where we will also cover why it's crucial to file early in the fiscal year and what you should watch out for, especially with pending cases and USCIS annual cap on visas. So stay tuned. If you have been finding Prof. Dan tutorials on YouTube really helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Sharing is caring, as they say, so pass it on, pass the content to others who might greatly benefit. I personally would love to hear your thoughts and questions in the comment sections. We've been trying to respond to many questions we get in our comment section. So feel free to drop in yours and be sure, of course, to subscribe so you will never miss out on great insights. Also, for all updates and more professional content, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn, St. Daniel's Global LLC. Yeah, your support means everything. So let's get started for today's content. Now, the very first thing I would love to explain, again, this is for those who might not understand the fiscal year quarters in the US, in the United States. So I'm going to briefly explain that to you all. And from there, we'll look at the specific data we want to analyze for today's video. Now, in the US, the US government fiscal year, or let's say financial year, typically runs from October 1st to September 30th of the following year. So for example, fiscal year 2024, which you always see FY 2024, started on October 1st, 2023 last year, and is going to end on September 30th, 2024. This month, September 30th, will be the end of the fiscal year 2024. Then that of 2025 will get started. Now, this breakdown is quite important to understand, especially when you are looking at the US immigration and visa processing data, as things like, visa allocations and approvers, deniers, and the likes are often reported based on fiscal year quarters. So now you see on the screen, it's simply, we have the first quarter, which is Q1, typically runs from October 1st to December 31st. And that includes the month of October, November, and December. Similarly, in continuing with that, the second quarter, Q2, runs from January 1st to March 31st. And that also is covering the month of January, February, and March. Then we have the third quarter, which runs from April 1st to June 30th, covering April, May, and June. And finally, we have the fourth quarter, which is Q4, runs from July 1st to September 30th, covering July, August, and September. So as of the time of recording this video in September 2024, we are in the fourth quarter, and very soon it's going to end, which already started since July 1st up until expected to end September 30th. Now, I even have all of this background and understanding, we will dive deeper into some of the data that has been made available by the USCIS, and it's based on this real fact data that I will be showing more insights, analysis into, and drawing further, clarity on this data. First and foremost, to let you all know again, the top 5 countries. So for those of you who are applying for an employment-based green card, now whether it's under the EB1, the EB2, or the EB3, here are some important things you should know based on the latest data for the fiscal year 2024. Just like before, just like the previous fiscal year, we also have the trend remaining the same kind of. And yeah, I'm talking about the top 5 countries for these I-140 petitions. So the top 5 countries were the most petitions submitted for the EB1, 2, and 3 green card categories in 2024 so far, fiscal year, Q1 to Q3 only are Indian, China, the Philippines, Brazil, and of course, my home country, Nigeria. And here on this list, we see that Nigeria is the only African country which is among the top 5. So kudos to you guys. I'm really proud of you all who are making your applications for these immigration employment-based visa category. Now, this simply means that people from all of these countries are really filing the highest number of petitions to work in the US in specialized roles. And why is this important? Why, yes, we really commend petitioners from these countries. It's also good to know that this helps to understand where the demand is really coming from and which countries have the most applicants competing for these employment-based visas. Now, if you are, important to note, from one of these countries, this could also mean slightly longer processing times due to the high volume of petitions. And we've seen that being the case. There has been longer processing times for applicants from Nigeria. For example, when you submit your petition, it's now taking longer time to receive, feedback of either RFE or approval from USCIS. This is in part attributed to this number of high volume. The next thing we're going to look at is overall, let's look at globally on a worldwide trend data, what has been the case for the last fiscal year, 2023, Q1 to 4, and the present fiscal year, which is about ending, for Q1 to 3 only. Let's look at the possible trends to understand what's really happening. So on the screen presently, if you watch with me, you would see that again, for the EB1 category, yeah, the we're talking about the EB1A, the EB1B, and the EB1C. You will recall that for the EB1 category, there are 3 subcategories. The EB1A, or refers to as the EB11, that is for extraordinary ability self-petitioners. Self-petitioners, you can self-petition for that subcategory. For the EB2, for professors and the likes, I beg your pardon, for the EB1, 2, or the EB1B, that's for professors, you can't self-petition for that. It's going to be from the institution or your employer. And for the EB1C or the EB13, that's for multinationals, managers, and executives. So all of these subcategories make up the EB1 category of the employment-based visa. So now for 2023, last fiscal year, Q1 to 4, we observe again from the USCIS source data release, number of approved cases, 30,326. That is a lot. That is a lot. However, this number is less than the expected allocation to the EB1, which is about 28% of the total visas made available for the employment-based EB1 to 5 categories. And that's why you see that the EB1 category is current for most countries, except, excuse me, except for top countries like China and India. You see that for other countries, chargeable employment-based visa category EB1 has been current so far. That current simply means that when you apply and you are approved, visa is readily available for you and you can proceed to the next stage of either adjusting your status or going through the consular processing. Excuse me. So that's it. So because this number approved in 2023, for example, is less than the required allocated number for a number of visa available for the EB1 category, which is about 28% of 140,000 plus. So about 40,000 of these visas, right? So again, I think in the last video, I did explain this about the EB1, which we should possibly be expecting oversubscription due to more number of people now applying. For the 2024, so far in this fiscal year, especially just for Q1 to Q3 only, as explained, the number of approved cases is being 15,713, though that is still about half, let's just say about half of the approved cases for the last fiscal year, even though we only have one quarter left for 2024. That says something. In the next slide, I'm going to be explaining some of these implications or insight that we can draw from this. Now let's go to denied for 2023. You see the number of petitions denied for the EB1 is 4,000 plus. And so far, so good in this fiscal year. We've had 1,000 plus denied. And for number of pending cases, there are a lot still pending. So as of the time the data was released for Q1 to 3 fiscal year 2024, there are still 12,000 plus about 13,000 pending cases. So that also means something. And if you had the pending cases plus that of approved cases, you would see that this is almost about, let's say, 30,000, about 30,000, which has not yet gotten to the allocated number of visas for this EB1 category made available by the government. But then, in Q4, there is possibility that we have many number of pending cases that have not been added. And that number is pretty high, which when all added together, will take us beyond the number of allocated visas for this EB1 category. And that's why in the last video, when we explained that, you would observe or see that, yes, there is no longer visa available in this month of September, even though we are not yet done with the fiscal year. So that's because of the oversubscription. And now, again, like I said, it simply means we should start washing out possibly for oversubscription. If the trend continues and we continue to have more applicants for this EB1 category. And lastly, on this slide, let's look at a worldwide data on the EB2 NIW. Of course, we know for this category, for all countries, it is not current for all countries. There is no visa readily available. Even when you have an approved case, you have to join the queue. You have to wait because of the oversubscription for all countries. So for this, when we look at 2023, quarter 1 to 4 fiscal year, the number of approved cases, 81,153. Again, the number of visas available for this country worldwide is about 40,000. So when you look at that, it's like doubled number of approved cases. That's why there is this queue of people waiting for their priority dates. And so far, so good. When we now look at 2024, quarter 1 to 3, you see that so far the number of approved cases is 40,695. So that means even though we have not finished the 2024 fiscal year, quarter 4 data is not yet included, and there might still be pending cases before this data was released. We would see that it appears like with this data, 40,000 plus, we've already reached the landmark for the number of visas made available for the EB2 again. And then if you had the more than half of the last fiscal year and more people that have applied, you see that the queues continue to get longer and longer. And that's why for people that apply now, and even though they get their approval, they can still wait possibly 1-2 years plus before they, are able to adjust their status if they're in the US or go through consular processing. So that's that for this worldwide data. Now I'm going to draw some kind of insights into this data. So let's look at what can we infer? What can we infer from all of this? So first and foremost is look at the denial percentage for 2023. So I've calculated that, and that's about 14.2% of petitions were denied in the last fiscal year. And also, so far, so good with the data we have for fiscal year 2024, the number of denied cases stand presently the percentage at 9.18%. Yes, of course, that is yet to reach the 14.2%, but we should take note that we are not done yet with the fiscal year 2024. Well, if we are to infer from this present data, we would still say there is a significant decrease in EB1 deniers, in this present fiscal year compared to that of the last fiscal year 2023, as the denial rate dropped from 14.2% to about 9.18% based on what we have presently. Next is let's look at decline in EB1 approvals. Again, based on this data, we can infer that in the fiscal year 2023, we have 13,326 EB1 approvals. But then when you look at that of the fiscal year 2024, we only have 15,713 approvals. And really, even though we have quarter 4 yet to be added, this may actually indicate a slower approval pace for fiscal year 2024. When you look at this, really it's slow. It's slow compared to the last fiscal year. But keep in mind, though, Q4 is yet to be included. And even when it's included, I'm afraid to say that we possibly will have lower approval for the EB1 category for fiscal year 2024 compared to 2023. But then when we also look at the table, we see the pending cases left for fiscal year 2024 about 12,811 as seen on the screen. EB1 petition still pending. Now, this also indicates that many cases are still being processed and might get approved in this quarter four. And finally, on this analysis, let's look at the EB2 NIW trend. And in this case, you would see that in fiscal year 2023, we have 81,153 EB2 NIW cases were approved. But then in the fiscal year 2024, I said earlier, only 40,695 so far. And this could also suggest that the EB2 NIW cases are also being processed more slowly, or that more approvals may still come in quarter four. So far, so good in this fiscal year 2024. Even more people have received RFE, more people than ever before. Even consultants, accredited representatives, lawyers who perhaps their clients have never received the RFE before. I'm afraid to say that most of these people have received RFE, their clients, so to say, have received RFE. That's just the trend of what is going on presently, which also literally means that perhaps USCIS officers are considering further factors, and maybe they also look more closely to these cases or not. Although we've seen some RFE that doesn't really make sense, where there are contradictory statements from the USCIS officers. I think in the last two set of videos, I did explain something like that, and I showed you evidence from such RFE that was received. So let's take a look at some key implications from this. Again, like I've said so far, you will just see that there is slower processing. That's one thing we can infer from this. With all this decrease in approval EB1 cases, we could infer that there is slower processing. And we can also see that this is taking longer. It's really taking longer this year. And of course, as it's been said, it's maybe due to high demand or even backlog. We also know perhaps one would still argue, even at that, there is still lower denial rates from what we are seeing so far. And of course, the pending cases also means a lot. My own advice, Prof. Dan advice would be that looking at all this slower pace in fiscal year 2024, it's kind of important for applicants, self-petitions to consider acting early enough in the fiscal year. When you do that, you possibly ensure that your petitions are processed in a timely manner, especially for those who feel they are qualified for the EB1A self-petition category. With the way things are beginning to go, I would suggest that you apply on time. Yeah, because in the past, those who already had their EB2 NIW approved, my advice again is if you can, position yourself for the EB1A, give it a try, go ahead and do that. Many of you, it's been 1 year plus, you are still waiting even after receiving the EB2 NIW approval. If you are pressed with time, one would assume that in the past 1 year that you are still waiting, your case has changed, your profile has changed, or perhaps improved. And if that's the case, and you see that possibly you've positioned yourself for the EB1A, why not go ahead and give it a try to apply now? All right, so I haven't said all of this, talked about globally, what is obtainable from the data analysis. Now let's take a look, dive deeper into my own country, Nigeria. Hey, Nigerians, my country people, how una dey? So let me explain one or two things that is going on here. So again, let's look at the trend and draw great insights from this. Now, first, let's take a look at the EB1 or EB11 alien with extraordinary ability. As I explained earlier, you know that this category you can self-petition. So let's look at what has been happening. So now You see what you have on the screen, approved rate so far. So there has been a significant increase in approvers for the EB1A category, as we see from 115 in fiscal year 2023 to 219 in fiscal year 2024. Remember, just quarter 1 to 3, we've not added out of quarter 4 data yet. So this literally indicates a growing interest, or let's say a better success rate for Nigerians filing under the EB1A category. And of course, which means that more people are also applying than ever before. So kudos to you guys. More broadly, when we look at the Nigerian data for the EB1, now again, we call this encompasses the EB1A, EB1B, and the EB1C. Now, what's the trend we are seeing presently also? Let's look at the approved rates as seen on the screen, 176 in the fiscal year 2023 compared to 250 in the fiscal year 2024, quarter 1 to 3. Now, for the number of deniers, which is something to worry about also, of course, more people apply, more application. Here we see it's also more deniers. So the number of deniers has also increased slightly from 89 in fiscal year 2023 to 115 in fiscal year 2024. And perhaps there will still be more to come when that of quarter 4 is added. Although, well, even though the approval rate still seems high, but then we can't really say because it all depends on the volume of applicants in this 2024 compared to that of 2023. Now, the next thing we should look at is, let's look at the pending cases so far. So in this fiscal year 2024, there is still 292 pending application, and there is potential for further approvals. That's what it means by the end of quarter 4. Now suggesting that the numbers might also still, grow significantly from this pending number of cases, which is going to be splitted between approver and denier. So definitely we expect the approver for fiscal year 2024 to jump up and the denier as well to also jump up. Well, we hope the denier doesn't jump up so we can have more Nigerians receive approval, right? So for the EB2 category, let's see what's trending, what's going on. For the EB2 NIW, professionals with advanced degrees. Now, in this case, let's see approved number of cases. Wow. So when we look at this, we see the number of approval in fiscal year 2024, quarter 1 to 3 again. For the EB2 NIW applicants is presently at 1,172, which is really on track to match or perhaps surpass the 2,155 approvers in fiscal year 2023. And when we look at the deniers, so far deniers for this category have slightly decreased from 359 in fiscal year 2023 to 305 presently in fiscal year 2024, which again suggests either that we have more Nigerians who have a better prepared application or perhaps slightly more lenient adjudication in fiscal year 2024. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. Although we know that there are still pending cases, and based on this number of pending cases, which is still very large number for the EB2 NIW category, 1,934, and that really suggests that many cases are still under review, and additional approvals we should still expect, or additional deniers we should still expect. All of these will still likely emerge by the end of the fiscal year 2024. So on the screen presently is data for Nigerians applicants in the EB1A category, EB1 in general, and the EB2 NIW. And Overall, what we can infer is that the number of approvers in all categories is already approaching or exceeding the fiscal year 2023 levels. And that really suggests that more people across the globe, and of course, more Nigerians also are applying for these employment-based green cards in fiscal year 2024. That is it. There is a growing trend. So my advice, again, coming from Prof. Dan to you all is, you self-petitioners, ensure you submit well-prepared applications to increase your chances of approval and reduce our FE, request for evidence. I'm aware that many of you self-petitioners too are utilizing my playlist on Prof. Dan Tutorials, YouTube video playlist for EB2 NIW, playlist for EB1 category respectively to prepare your petition. My advice to you will be that while you rely on that and you are able to write your petition by yourself, do it yourself, which is the main goal. This is really great. Ensure before you proceed to submission, you tidy things up. Try to have a second eye, professional eye, to look at your written petition so that if there is any adjustment needed, if there is feedback given to you, you can work on all of this in order for you to, of course, have a more robust, well-competitive, solid, and well-grounded petition that perhaps will receive approval. So that will be it for today. If you need assistance in one way or the other, please reach out. For those of you sending out common email inquiries, my advice to you would be, most of the questions you ask and send out to us via email, while our team tries best to, respond, imagine having, hundreds of emails on a weekly basis. We might not be able to respond to everyone. My candid advice would be that most of the questions you ask are already answered in many of the YouTube videos on the Prof. Dan YouTube tutorial. So if you've taken your time to search some of these things, you would definitely see answers. So remember that being thorough with your forms and documentation is key to you avoiding delays from USCIS, receiving RFE, or even rejections or denial in your petition. So double check everything. Use the latest forms directly from the USCIS website, and don't hesitate to seek help if perhaps you are unsure. Again, if this video helped you, please comment, subscribe for more tips to help you navigate the immigration process. Thanks for watching, and best of luck in your petition. Wishing you all the best.